Lakehurst, New Jersey. On the night of August 7th into the 8th, handlers eased Graf Zeppelin from a floodlit hangar.
That date sounds oddly careful.
It has to be. American sources call August 8 the official start. Another institutional account dates the physical departure a day earlier.
So we keep the night, and we don't invent an exact time.
What isn't disputed is the scale. About 20 passengers, 40 crew, and several thousand pounds of mail.
Twice as many crew as travelers.
And once they reach the ground,
a normal Graf Zeppelin landing could need at least 200 handlers. The cabin was only the visible tip of a much larger system.
That changes the glamour immediately. One guardrail before we leave Lakehurst. This is Graf Zeppelin, not Hindenburg. Different airship, different story.
Good. Then the question isn't how disaster arrived. It's how this machine made a whole planet look reachable.
The printed route looks almost neat. Lakehurst, Friedrichshafen, Kasamigaura near Tokyo, Los Angeles, then Lakehurst again. What made that line possible?
It wasn't really a line. For an airship, weather was a road. Eckener changed course and altitude to find useful moving air.
So the shortest path could be the slower one.
Yes. Across Russia and Siberia, bad conditions forced a southern detour. The crew followed radio stations, rivers, and mountain ranges toward the Sea of Okhotsk.
No runway beneath them. Sometimes no settlement for hundreds of miles.
Which is why the voyage was also an experiment. Test the ship across climates, learn navigation, and gather experience for regular routes.
That sounds less like a victory lap and more like fieldwork with tablecloths.
Fieldwork that newspapers paid to watch. Where did Hearst fit?
His organization materially financed the trip and placed reporters aboard. The journey carried news almost as deliberately as it carried mail.
So publicity wasn't painted on afterward.
No, but that doesn't make the flying false. The engineering trial and the headline event were the same voyage.
What was that voyage like for the passengers?
Intimate. Roughly 20 passengers dined, wrote, watched the landscape, and slept in a small section beneath an airship mostly devoted to structure, gas, engines, fuel, and crew.
A lounge with a continent moving under the windows.
And mail everywhere in the story. Souvenir covers earned money. Newspapers carried dispatches, and radio kept the ship tied to distant stations.
That makes the luxury feel almost incidental.
Not incidental to the people inside, just small beside the work around them.
Then Siberia makes the contrast sharper. After nearly 100 hours from Friedrichshafen, Graf Zeppelin reached Kasamigaura. Was it ready to leave again?
Not quite. One engine gondola was damaged and one gas cell had a puncture. The stop became repair time before crossing the Pacific.
A world flight held up by two very local problems.
And once repaired, what course could they trust over open ocean?
Not the original approach toward Seattle. Reports warned of trouble there, so the ship turned toward Oregon and helpful air south of the low-pressure system.
Then what, precisely, did the Pacific leg achieve?
The careful claim is a first non-stop crossing of the northern Pacific by airship. Japan to the Golden Gate took 68 hours.
Northern Pacific, non-stop, by airship.
Because first across the Pacific would promise more than the evidence.
The account says forecasts reached the ship by radio. How much difference could a message make?
Enough to change the arrival coast. It also helped Eckener seek helpful currents, rather than force a rigid course through every storm.
So the radio room was part of the engine.
In practical terms, yes. Graf Zeppelin entered the Golden Gate near sunset, circled San Francisco, then continued south through darkness.
The ocean crossing was over. The landing still wasn't. Los Angeles came hours later. The ship reached Mines Field at night and waited until dawn to tie to an emergency mast.
That pause matters. Arrival still depended on a mast, lines, conditions, and people ready on the ground.
Departure proved the point. On August 27th, the airship barely cleared high-tension wires leaving Mines Field.
After crossing an ocean, a row of wires almost stopped the circuit.
Then the ship crossed the United States by a southern route, bent north near El Paso to avoid another storm, and passed city after city.
Was that route only about weather?
Not entirely. Requests came from places that wanted to see the airship. The circuit was navigation and public appearance at once.
Efficient travel usually avoids detours. A demonstration sometimes needs witnesses.
At 8:13 on the morning of August 29th, Graf Zeppelin returned to Lakehurst. 21 elapsed days, and under 12 days actually aloft.
That achievement needs no exaggeration.
But did it make global passenger service ordinary?
No. It proved remarkable capability. It also exposed the support network. Forecasts, radios, repair crews, landing fields, hundreds of handlers, financing, and constant judgment.
Which is why the headlines were partly true. People really had watched the future arrive, just not a finished future.
The flight made Earth look smaller. The work behind it made the challenge look larger.
That may be the honest wonder of Graf Zeppelin.
If the journey earned it, like, follow, and subscribe.
We'll meet again in the next story.